Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Herb Smart. I am your host today, and I am a member of the Technical Advisory Committee. I'm going to go over a couple brief reminders, and then we'll get going. So first off, please do not put the call on hold, and please go on mute when you wish to speak, and unmute yourself when you're ready to speak. Just makes it a lot easier for everybody. If you announce yourself before you speak, it's always going to help out. We recognize a lot of voices as a lot of us are on these calls regularly, but if it always helps out to announce yourself. So for record keeping purposes, just like an in-person TAC meeting, we have members of the public here today. I see some members of the public here, and we also have TAC membership as well. And staff and council. Our agenda features a public participation comment item. So that will come up and you will be able, members of the public will be able to provide comment there. Use the chat feature if you like. We'll do the best we can to get back to you as soon as possible, and I may be posting various links or information in there as well. And lastly, this meeting is being recorded and materials are available currently on turlockgroundwater.org on the meeting page. I could say with specificity that on the page currently for this meeting are the agenda packet, as well as the memo on undesirable results that will be discussed, and the presentation that will be given by Todd Groundwater. So with that, I will hand it over to TAC leadership and let you run your meeting.
Hi, this is Debbie. I just got a text from Lacey saying that she was having trouble getting on. Lacey, are you able to speak?
Hey, Debbie, this is Michael.
Okay.
Why don't I jump in right now? Good afternoon, everybody. This is Michael Cook. I'm the chair of the West Turlock Subbasin Technical Advisory Committee. And I know we have with us Kevin Kaufman, who is my counterpart for the East Turlock Subbasin. To get started, because this is subject to the Brown Act, we usually do some type of roll call to see who's here from the various member agencies, to see if we have a quorum, and so if any actions taken are, done and recorded properly. So with that, my name is Michael Cook with Turlock Irrigation District. Who else do we have from Turlock Irrigation District?
Hi, this is Debbie Liebersbach with the TID.
Michael Clipper with TID.
Okay, good. And Herb, you're with us.
That's correct. Thanks.
Sorry. Stanislaus County.
Ward, Stanislaus County.
Bill, Merced County.
Hi, Lacey McBride.
And Brody Patterson is here as well.
Hey, welcome, Brody. Okay, starting with the cities. If I can get them, I'll start from north to south. Anyone from Modesto?
I'm here. How you doing, guys?
Hey, good afternoon, Miguel.
Miguel? Yeah.
City of Ceres.
Karen Morgan's here.
Welcome, Karen. City of Turlock. City of Waterford. I think the city of Houston.
City of Houston here, Leah Simplakis.
Hi, Leah. Okay, let's do smaller agencies. So you have to help me out here, guys. I apologize. Daenerys?
Yeah, David from Daenerys CSD.
Hey, David.
Hi.
Keys? All right, now it gets embarrassing. Who am I missing?
Leandro Maldonado, Delhi, CWD.
And welcome, thank you.
Helmar?
Helmar County Water District, thank you, Walt. Curtis, anybody?
I got an email from Curtis earlier. He said he'll be joining a little bit later, but he will be joining.
Okay. Anybody else for the good of the order on the west side? I think with that, it sounds like we have a quorum by my math. I stand to be corrected. We need 7 members for a quorum. Kevin, you want maybe do a roll call on the east side?
Yes, I would. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. And I hear Lacey's on board now too. The west side, we just need 3, or excuse me, the east side, we just need 3 to make a quorum. But looking at the list, if you could just confirm that I see Walt Ward,
Yes.
and I see Lacey McBride and Brody. And Brody, so that's 1, and then myself. So we have a quorum. I didn't see Dennis or Hisham. Am I correct? Okay, not hearing from them. We do have a quorum, and so we have a viable meeting. Thank you, Michael. Do you want me to chair the meeting, Michael or Lacey, or do you want to chair it?
I'm fine either way, Kevin. I was just going to say maybe, I'm sorry, I was muted. Maybe anyone from the public want to introduce themselves so we know what our attendance is today. We've got a good group today, which is always good.
Yeah.
This is Milt Treeweiler, Turlock Citizen.
Amanda Monaco with Leadership Council.
Spreck Rosecrans, Restore Hetchetchy, wondering why nobody's got their camera on.
I'm sorry, I can fix that.
Really?
David Orth with
There we go.
Water Land Consulting.
Amanda Peisch Derby, DWR.
We got John Lambie here with his video camera on now. There you go, Spreck.
This is Claire Howard with the San Luis and Delta Mendota Water Authority in the Delta Mendota Subbasin.
Well, thanks everybody for introducing yourself. Our first action item on the agenda is item 40, approval of the minutes from the, we can do these in one, I believe. So July 23rd minutes and the August 13th minutes. They were circulated earlier this week. Do I have an action to approve or amend the minutes for the West Turlock Subbasin GSA from TAC meetings from July 23rd or August 13th?
Move to approve. Curtis?
And that's for both, Curtis?
Sure.
Okay, do I have a second?
There's Walt, second both.
Remind me, do we do a roll call or can you just do a voice vote?
You can do a voice as long as you ask for any opposition, and if anyone opposes, then you can move to roll call.
That's right, Valerie, thanks for the reminder. So we have a motion and a second. Any clarifications? This is for West Turlock. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? No opposition. So those 2 sets of minutes stand approved unanimously. Over to you, Kevin.
Thank you, Michael. Could I have a motion from the East Turlock Subbasin GSA TAC to approve minutes from July 23rd and August 13th, please?
Move approval, both. Walt?
Thank you, Walt. Second by Brody or Lacey?
Second.
Thank you, Lacey. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, minutes are passed unanimously. Thank you.
Kevin. Okay, item number 5. This is a section set aside for public participation where members of the public can address the technical advisory committee on any item related to our work, either on the agenda or not on the agenda. If you want to talk about something that is on the agenda, You can talk about that now, or you're welcome to do that when that agenda item is up for consideration. So at this time, is there any public participation? No hands raised. Herb? Doesn't look like it.
I'm looking now. I'm not seeing any.
Okay. So nothing on item number 5, public participation. So on to item 6, budget. Michael Clipper, our treasurer on the West Turlock Subbasin, update of the budget and future expenditures and revenues. So over to you, Michael Clipper.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. For the West Turlock account, starting beginning of July, we had a balance of $111,071.80. We spent $2,990, leaving us with a month-end balance of $108,081.80. And just as an FYI, invoices will be sent out shortly. I was kind of delayed unexpectedly for a couple of weeks on getting those invoices out. So hopefully, probably look for it sometime this week or next week would be DHA.
Sounds good, Michael.
So,
thank you.
Any questions on the west one before I move on to the basin? So then moving on to the basin account, we had, beginning of July, we had $833,036.85. We spent $37,806.12, leaving us with a balance of 870,000. Oops, I'm sorry. There's a deposit of $37,806.12, leaving us with a balance of $870,842.97.
Any questions for Michael on the basin wide account? Anything else from you, Mr. Clipper?
Only one kind of little side note on the basin account. We've been doing pretty well the last, year to two because we've been getting reimbursements. Now we're going to be spending money on invoices and not being reimbursed. So it'll be kind of more of a declining balance essentially.
Well, thanks for the heads up on that.
So a clarification on that, Michael, this is Kevin. The 37,800 roughly, that was a reimbursement from DWR?
Yes.
Oh, okay, and that's probably the last one for a while?
My understanding, they're kind of clarifying it, but we'll have a few more, but they're going to be smaller and farther in between, is my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
So it's good, yeah. So we'll get reimbursements, but it'll just be, before we were getting, $80,000, $90,000 on a kind of a quarterly basis. Now we're going to be getting, maybe 10 or 20,000, depending on quarters and what we expend. But my understanding, it will go down quite a bit. We only have, under $100,000 left in reimbursements for the first grant.
Okay.
And how that worked out is, so I think we're getting reimbursed for the first part. We have about 1.6, so we're almost done with $1 million, and that's what we've expended. And then we'll go on to the 600,000, our portion of it.
Very good. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem.
If no questions, Michael, I'll proceed with the East Turlock Subbasin GSA financial report or They had a board meeting this morning. All the things were presented, all the reconcile sheets and where we are this far in the year in budget. Nothing unusual to explain. So unless there's questions, I have nothing else to report from the East Turlock Subbasin GSA.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, on to item, well, any questions from the public, sorry, before we go on about the budgets for the two GSAs? Okay, hearing nothing, moving on to item number 7. Update on the groundwater sustainability plan budget and schedule. Phyllis standing with Todd Groundwater. Over to you, Phyllis.
Can you see my screen, Michael?
I can, for sure.
Thank you. And can everybody hear me okay, I hope? Thank you so much. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to hear and see everyone again. We have 2 items on the agenda today that I'm going to be addressing. And those begin with a administrative item, which is an update on the GSP budget and schedule. That's item number 7 on your agenda. And then we'll also be covering item number 8, the undesirable results definition. So let's talk a little bit about money and schedule. This is a bit of background. It's a little bit long-winded, but essentially our original scope and budget was put together in 2017. Seems like a long time ago by now. And at that point, the GSP regulations weren't yet final, and there were no other GSPs that had been developed. And the C2V SIM model that we ultimately used for the subbasin wasn't yet available. We also didn't yet have the sustainable management criteria guidance, nor did we have the NCAG groundwater dependent ecosystems mapping done at that time. And finally, didn't have any guidance at all on the climate change issues that we now have information from DWR. Even with all of those uncertainties, we knew that it was a large level of effort, especially given that we're all doing this for the first time. But it was difficult to estimate the actual amounts per individual task. We didn't guess perfectly on how the GSP would take shape, but I think we did make some good estimates. We did underfund modeling efforts, the sustainable management criteria and the level of effort that's needed to support that, and then some of those unknown items above. I remember at the very beginning of the projects, the GSAs looked at our technical team and they said, how are you going to manage the uncertainties as you encounter them through this process? And at that point, we noted that we'd built in some flexibility for some data options in particular that could potentially be tapped as needed. In other words, giving us the opportunity to rearrange some of the budget among the tasks. And I think we're at a point now where we are recommending, the technical team is recommending permission to do that. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. The first thing we'll look at is the GSP budget update table. Let me quickly walk you through this. These are the tasks associated with the GSP. They include GSP technical items, which are generally identified as category C here. These have to do with the grant categories. A project management and grant administration category, which is A, and then stakeholder outreach and involvement, which is B. The total budget, as Michael actually just alluded to a few minutes ago, is $1.6 million. To date, we have billed almost $1 million of that, so about 56% of the project billed to date, with a remaining budget of about $735,000,
Okay, no, that's fine.
or 44% of the total.
The previous one was going up to
I'm hearing some
Seattle,
talking. I don't know if someone's
and
asking
that's
me a
what I was trying
question.
I was trying to avoid that.
Just
Okay.
to remind everybody, when you're be on mute while Phyllis is talking, just in case. We've all done it, so please be on mute and then unmute yourself if you have a question for Phyllis. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think, you know, the good news is that overall, I believe that this budget is sufficient to complete the GSP in good order. However, there are some task deficits that we've already run into and some remaining unfunded work. So that's what we need to deal with.
Oh, okay. So we still
We're
got to pay more
proposing
for it.
scope revisions and moving budgets among some of these
Oh, okay, go ahead.
tasks. And I'm going to go through the details of that now.
Oh, okay. Oh, that sounds great.
Oh, we got somebody on the phone. I'm going to keep going. If this is difficult for others, please stop me. Okay, so here we are again, the second budget update table, the same one that we were just looking at. But in this one, I've highlighted the task that I was referring to in the beginning when I said that there was some data options or some flexibility associated with some of the tasks. And this relates directly to task one, which was a data management system. When we first began this, we began to think that a data management system that was web-based with so many parties and so many people involved might be helpful, and that we could have perhaps some data management system that would allow for some visualization and maybe even functionality of the data. That was a possibility, and we were proposing that at that time. Our current data management system consists really of more conventional software, doesn't have those bells and whistles that I think the GSAs were thinking might be appropriate at some point through the GSP process. And but at this point, I think we have to admit that we're currently still unsure about exactly how, if we went toward a web-based system, what we might want. And there would need to be some additional thought and objectives identified. We would need to have a better understanding of how other data management systems are put together. And the other thing that we have now is so many more tools from DWR. In particular, the CASGEM program is being migrated. Most of those wells, at least in the short term, are being migrated over to the Sigma portal. So that has a really nice feature, a module associated with that. And then there are other visualization tools on the Sigma planning tool website. And then they also have a data tool website. So there are additional web-based opportunities already out there in the world. And perhaps the GSAs don't need the additional system internally, at least not at this time. So our plan is to propose to the GSAs that we use our current data management system that we have that's being developed right now, and that we prepare it for submittal to DWR at the end of the GSP process in January, which is required. And I believe that even though it may not be the most beautiful DMS that everybody has seen, that it certainly meets regulations. And I think at this point, it meets the GSA's needs. I have yet to understand that the GSAs are really wanting to move toward a web-based system at this time. So because of all of those reasons, and because we have some deficits of tasks now, and because we're moving in the direction of increasing some of those deficits in those tasks, the technical team is recommending that we reallocate funds between tasks 1, 5, and 7. So what that means is that we would need to leave enough money in the task 1 to be able to format and QC and combine the current data management system components for submittal to DWR in January with the GSP, but that we would also move some of the money that had been envisioned for a web-based system toward tasks that could use additional funding, in particular to finish up the groundwater conditions and the support of the groundwater dependent ecosystem analysis that's ongoing for the task number 5, and also to bolster the next few months for task number 7 for the sustainable management criteria. We do have deficits shown also in task number 6 at this point. We are proposing to cover the deficits in task 6 with the funding that we have in task 8. And since I haven't mentioned that or highlighted that, I'm going to point to this. This is where we need to be heading as soon as possible. And that's the development and analysis of the projects and management actions associated with the project. We're continuing to use some funds in that project as we begin to get everything set up in order to analyze projects going into that task. But we still have a significant amount of funding left for that task, and believe at this point that we'll be able to move or at least manage this task along with the water budget, the continuing water budgets. So that's how that would be covered. And then just as a final mention, this doesn't change numbers on this table in any way, but the technical team has continued to assist with some of the outreach for public meetings and would be using some of that money in task 14 as well to move all of this forward. So that is the recommendation, and I'm going to stop now and see if anybody has any questions or any comments that they would like to make on the current budget or the recommendations that the technical team has recommended.
Phyllis, I see, this is Herb, I see Dave Odom has his hand up. I don't know if that pertains to your presentation, but Dave, go right ahead if you have anything.
It was a while ago. It was during Michael's budget issue. He was talking about the invoices, and he already messaged me about it.
I'll ask Phyllis more comment, I guess. This is Kevin Kaufman, Phyllis. Say thank you for the presentation and letting us know where you're at, where the team's at this point. I appreciate you looking to what we talked about early on in the process is, you know, trying to have enough money in there so we can move these monies around. So I appreciate your attitude. And is there any action you need from either the East or the West TAC today on this?
I wasn't thinking about that in particular, Kevin. I guess I assumed that I would show this today and answer questions and address concerns. And then I'm assuming that there needs to be a written product back to the tax, back to the GSAs, just to memorialize anything that the GSAs approve. So I guess that there would be another bite at the apple to actually formally approve it. But I have to admit, you've caught me a little flat-footed as to the exact process. Michael, do you have a comment on that?
Well, just it's not an action item right now, so we won't vote on it. We have in the past, as Kevin mentioned, set this whole thing up so we could move money around. I think some type of memo that we could memorialize and get, provide as an informational item to both of our boards, just to show that we are watching the expenditures carefully and recognizing that we've never done a GSP before. So it's somewhat of a moving target, but we do have adequate monies overall to complete the work. So I was just thinking some type of documentation. We can bring it back to the TAC for a vote, for a formal vote. There's nothing wrong with that, but ultimately we need to provide that information to our boards just so they know what's going on.
Hi, this is Debbie as well. And I will need to coordinate with our DWR grant administrator on this as well. I mean, I think there's opportunity to kind of do all of this, but I need to kind of follow up with him on the specifics with respect to that.
Quite right, Debbie. Thanks for catching that. Okay, any questions for Phyllis on the budget right now? Or comments? Okay, hearing none. Next item, Phyllis.
So the next item is just one slide I have here for a revised schedule. And this is a little bit of a messy chart, so I want to walk you through it because there are several things I'd like to highlight on this schedule. First of all, this goes through the entirety of the project, and there's a huge milestone here, which is January 31st, 2022, when the GSP is actually delivered to DWR. So this shows all of the blue bars are the technical work that is required to support this process. PM, the project management, is grant administration, and that goes a little further, because after we submit the GSP, we're also required to do additional quarterly report and completion report associated with the grant. So that's the only reason this one little blue bar is allowed to go past January 31st, 2022. Everything else has to come to a complete halt because we are submitting. We also have built into this some time period for adoption here. And so as a result of that, we're really cutting things very close. And I'd like to highlight a couple of things. So these additional technical tasks, we're here, by the way. Here's our yellow star. We're at the end of August, beginning of September in 2020. And there is the time period left for preparation and adoption, approval and adoption of the GSP. These are some of the technical things that we just highlighted that we are moving money to cover. The finalization for the groundwater dependent ecosystems and the additional work being done for groundwater conditions in that technical task, the continuation of the water budgets and how they will support the projects and management actions, which is down here, and then the continuation and finalization of the sustainable management criteria. One thing I want to point out is the sustainable management criteria. That's what we're talking about right now. So here we have a blue bar that we've covered this amount of time, and I have shown that there's additional amount of time. The reason that I've shown this in this manner is that I've recognized from doing other GSPs in some of the critically overdrafted basins that the sustainable management criteria, because they are all new terms, it's all new concepts, and because it's difficult to understand exactly how it's going to affect you until you get a little further along and how you're actually going to manage the basin and how you're going to manage your projects, is that certainly we would want to finish up and define undesirable results. That's what we're going to talk about in the remaining part of my presentation today. But there may be a need to adjust. We're selecting minimum thresholds. We're selecting certain wells in our monitoring programs and our monitoring networks. And there may be a need as we move forward and we continue to look at how this affects all of us from a technical perspective and from a management and policy perspective as well. There may be a need for adjustment. So I have let this bar go for some time, overlapping the analysis of projects and management actions. That doesn't mean that we can allow that to continue to lag. We want to move forward. I think we're in a good position. We've been talking about this for some time. Move forward and select some preliminary definitions and some preliminary sustainable management criteria. But recognize that this is not your final bite at the apple, that there's more information that we can pull together and better understand everything as we go forward. The time critical task is this one, and I have a big red bar highlighted there. There's a lot to do here, and I have I have really pushed this. This needs to there's a tremendous amount to do in this short amount of time, relatively short amount of time, and so we want to get going on this in October. It was just like, how it's just like you thought it would be May, and then you kind of thought it would be July, and then you, well, it's okay. It could be August. And so here we are in August. And so we really need to get this going, because I think this is going to require analysis, and this will take some time. I know that no one is waiting on me to think about this. I know that in particular, the East Turlock Subbasin GSA has done a lot of work and put a lot of thought into projects and management actions, and that's great, but we need to get that memorialized, get that incorporated into the plan, and then get everything analyzed and moving everything together and moving it forward. So just wanted to point that out and highlight that we really, really want to get going on this just as soon as we possibly can. So that is all I need to say about that. And then I just wanted to point out that this Gantt chart looks a little different from what you're used to seeing from us, because I have put now the additional supporting analyses associated with the Round 3 grant. And those are shown here at the bottom of the Gantt chart. And they involve putting together the programmatic EIR to support the GSP process. So that will be very important to coordinate with the projects and management actions that we'll be looking at. Also, new monitoring well installations, we're pushing on that right away. And then the development of a groundwater recharge assessment tool, which is also part of the grant. That kickoff meeting is being scheduled in the next week or so here. So, so we're pushing forward on these analyses to assist with this, but we don't want to take our eye off this ball. This to me is something that we need to get going on right away, and we want to do that just as soon as we possibly can. Any questions at all on the schedule?
It's Michael. I have a question. So the one you said to keep our eye on is task 8, which is analyze projects and management actions to achieve sustainability goal.
Correct.
Okay, so in the other areas you've worked in, what's the normal process for that in terms of developing projects and management actions? Would Todd kind of propose a list that would work, or is we just kind of think about things and come up with them by ourselves? What's the normal process for developing a list of projects and management actions?
You hit the nail on the head. Let's begin to develop some lists, because what we want to do is get a comprehensive idea of the universe of ideas that we can put forth, and then we will eliminate, group, categorize, analyze.
Right.
So that is the process. Management actions. Also, I tend to think of them, I think what has happened in other subbasins that I've worked in is that the managers have looked at the management actions as policies. And that turns out to be a very nice guiding process. You know, there might be a policy to improve your monitoring program, and that would be a management action, but it's also, you know, you begin that management action by saying kind of where you want to go. What are your main objectives that you're trying to achieve? And so taking a little bit of a higher level look than us technical folks usually just go for the jugular of drill here, but taking a bigger approach to it, I think is a very helpful thing for these GSPs. So that's what I would recommend. I am going to bring forward a list of potential management actions and projects just to get the ball rolling. You can say, wow, you're really off base, we're not doing any of those, and that would be great. Just to get the ball rolling. We want to get some things in front of people and get this moving. Because again, it is going to take some time.
I'd appreciate that, Phyllis, because there's nothing more intimidating than a blank piece of paper, a blank whiteboard, at least for people like me. So I need something to get started with speaking for myself. Kevin, I think
we're also coordinating with adjacent subbasins. So I think as you had requested before, and we've provided in various past memoranda, that you know, you might be interested in seeing what others have done.
Appreciate that. Kevin, did you have something? No. Okay, questions for Phyllis on the schedule or any of the tasks there?
Phyllis, this is Debbie. So when would you anticipate that you would be providing and you know, making that preliminary list available for the group?
October is when we're going to start talking about it, but I think I can get the list together and maybe circulate it among the TAC members right away. It won't be complete, but we'll just keep adding to it. Would that be helpful? I assume you asked the question because you'd like to see something sooner rather than later.
I guess that's what I was thinking, is it might be helpful to at least get agencies thinking about it.
Agreed.
And then it might make your work in October a little easier, hopefully.
I think that's great. I am happy to do that. And in the meantime that I'm doing that, I would like for the GSAs to think about sustainable management criteria. Anything else on the schedule or the budget or anything?
So Phyllis,
Yes.
your intention, and I think you're going to talk about this next, was to have an initial sustainable management criteria by the next meeting. Was that it? And so you were looking for comments and what have you, or is that like the transition to the next topic?
No, let's deal with that right now. So we are we need to make headway in two categories, and we are going to talk about that in a little bit. But let's just go ahead and deal with it now. We need to define undesirable results. This is something that we need to agree on as a subbasin. It has to be consistently defined, and so we need to get that done. We have 2 meetings in September. I'm assuming we're doing a special meeting, so we have 2 bites at the apple for working on definitions of undesirable results and the preliminary framework for defining those undesirable results in the field. In other words, minimum thresholds and measurable objectives to the extent that we can get there. So those are the and there are other things that will be required. There are other details that we'll need to put to these definitions, but that can be continued on after we have the real work done. And I consider the real work to be the definition of the undesirable results and the selection of the minimum thresholds, at least a preliminary selection of the minimum thresholds, so that we all kind of know what we're getting ready to manage to. This will also tie into the projected water budgets, which I am pushing very hard to come in front of you in September, so that we have ourselves a target. And we don't have to finalize the projected water budgets in September. If people have more comments or questions, fine. But we need to get some understanding of future targets so that as we go into the projects and management actions, we have a goal. And so that's where we're headed. Does that answer your question, Debbie?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on budget or schedule? If not, we'll dive into what I've already started talking about. Okay, moving now to agenda item number 8, the undesirable results definition. So in July, we prepared a draft technical memorandum on undesirable results, whereby I was just beginning to propose some framework discussions. It was meant to be a working technical memorandum, and I got feedback from the TAC on that. I have now revised the memorandum based on that feedback, and that has been provided to the TAC members for their review. I'm less interested in perfecting the memorandum than I am getting information about the definitions for undesirable results and the framework. If you have any comments on the memorandum, I'm happy to take them. Please provide them to me. You know, that would be great. I don't want to have things in the memorandum that we don't want in there. But let's again, let's focus on the 2 balls in front of us that we need to get done for September. You will see in that new revised memorandum that there are sort of 3 revised frameworks. The reduction of groundwater and storage is something that the feedback that I got from the TAC changed. And you might recall that we had talked about there was a large storage volume of fresh groundwater in the Turlock Subbasin, and that we had depleted some of that storage over time, in particular in the last 25 years or so. And then the depletion sounded like a lot of water, of course, and it is a lot of water, but that there's still a large supply of fresh water below us. So as a result of that, it was a relatively small percentage, less than 10%, that had been depleted in the supply. And so I had moved in the direction of coordinating with the Merced Subbasin, which essentially said, no harm, no foul. And many TAC members felt that was not a prudent way to view that framework. that really the reduction of groundwater and storage, that the answer was not to just keep drilling deeper, that there would need to be some understanding of the fact that we were depleting our groundwater and storage. And as a result of that, I have revised the framework, and we're going to talk about that in a second. For land subsidence, I also recognized that we have such a small data set of information on the Western Lower Principal Aquifer. And the reason that that's important to us is because that aquifer is a confining layer with the Corcoran clay above it. And as we have seen in the Central Valley, the dewatering of the Corcoran clay is a significant trigger for land subsidence in many other portions of the Central Valley. And as a result of that, I began to think, well, we're not going to really have good information on the Western Lower Principal Aquifer because we don't have the data. We won't have good information going back in time to help us know, sort of what to avoid. And then I began to think, well, if we're avoiding the dewatering of the Corcoran clay, then perhaps with a buffer, that could be incorporated into the framework. We're getting ready to drill 2 additional monitoring wells, actually 4, but at 2 locations within the Western Principal Aquifers. And this will give us the opportunity to define at a specific monitoring location exactly where the Corcoran is. So we will have a better understanding of water levels in the lower aquifer as it relates to the potential dewatering of the clay. And that will be a good way to monitor, a good way to look at what's going on with respect to the potential for future land subsidence. Just for anyone who hasn't been following us since February, there's been no real significant impacts or evidence of land subsidence in the subbasin to date. But we recognize that with the Corcoran clay in our subbasin, it's something we want to avoid for the future. And then I've also added some information on the depletion of interconnected surface water. I chose as a working recommendation that we coordinate with our surrounding subbasins and that we use water levels as a proxy for the interconnected surface water. So that's the reason for those 3 revised frameworks. And then again, just want to continue to make this point. Undesirable results are required to be defined consistently for the entire subbasin. That doesn't mean there has to be a tremendous amount of local detail, but rather it has to be some understanding of what we're going to say are undesirable results. I'm going to review quickly the first 2 sustainability indicators, and then I'm going to promptly ignore the rest of these because I think we've talked about them before, and/or they are going to be more relatively straightforward to manage once we get these 2 under our belt. I think we even said this as early as earlier in the year that these 2 seem to be linked. They certainly are technically. I think the GSAs recognize that from a management perspective, they can be linked as well. And that I think if we tackle these 2 and get these done, a lot of these will fall into place. So if I can quickly review some details that we have talked about with respect to these 2 sustainability indicators, and I'm not going to take a lot of time on this. I'm just going to remind us of kind of where we were. We've talked about beneficial uses of wells within the subbasin. We have some input from others on the adverse impacts to water supply related to historic low water levels. These are potential undesirable results. They haven't been defined yet as undesirable results. But I think the question we've all asked ourselves is how can these impacts be mitigated? How can they be managed? And how can we deal with them should we come into another multi-level drought with historic lows similar to what we have just been through? I do have good feedback from some of the municipalities. The city of Turlock has let me know that at least for their shallow wells, they did have some concerns with respect to lowering of water levels. Ceres has documented a lot of issues associated with declining water levels in that area. And I won't review all of them. I've got a little bit of a list here. But that's really who we've heard from. I think we have also heard from Leandro at Delhi that certainly there have been some issues there, that they have been working with some of the local domestic wells, and then Stanislaus County and Merced County as well. So this is a little list of what we have to date. If there are others, time to know about that now. And this is just a well map that shows the Stanislaus and Merced County programs during the drought of record, when there were well failures and well problems associated with the drought. And the X's that are shown on the map show where there were domestic wells that notified the counties of issues. There was a variety of issues, as you can imagine, and they are, included, pulling suction on a pump because either the pump was set too high, the water levels were declining too quickly. There were also a series of failed wells, some of which were shallow and older, but some of which were not. And so these X's show the areas of those well problems. There are some of these that have been mitigated. There's more than 123, I think, well permits that have been filed with Stanislaus County to replace wells. And I know Merced has also had additional permitting. So we need to talk about or think about if these issues have been mitigated, and how to manage those, how to handle those as we go forward with developing sustainable management criteria. Also, as review, we had talked about some management actions that had been used by the various agencies in the Turlock Subbasin, and there is just a quick list of what management actions have been used so far. If there are others, would like to know about that too. So here is our definition of undesirable results, again, that we have got in our, that the technical team put in your most recent memorandum. Again, here's your homework. Early September. September is our month for getting this done. So if you have additional adverse impacts to consider, tell us now. Got to know now. So please get information to us or report on it in September. But September 10th, we're going to talk about it. And we're going to make a decision as to whether or not the GSAs have determined that these impacts are undesirable results. We also would like to get any input from the GSAs on additional considerations for undesirable results. I keep saying from the GSAs. I understand fully that the TACs are representing the GSAs for technical advisory, and that's what their function is. So we're talking about TAC meetings here. If I end up saying agencies or GSAs, I mean that this is coming back to the TAC. Okay, so additional considerations for the two things that we have in the memorandum. In other words, the definition of undesirable results and the sort of framework that we've put forth. I'm less worried about actually adding things to the framework as I am whether or not you agree with how the framework's put together. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. And then finally, if you have any other management actions or other mitigation measures to consider, let's start those lists now. In particular, as it relates back to this issue of access of water supply and the water supply potential deletion that we have seen in the subbasin over time. Okay, so moving on. Here are the here is again just the summary of the working definitions that are in the undesirable results memorandum. The TAC members have had this for a little bit longer than we got it up on the website a little bit late. So maybe those on the phone haven't had a chance to review this yet. But if the TAC members have any comments on any of these now, I'd like to take just a minute or two to offer up if you have anything on this at all that you'd like to discuss now, then let's do that. So maybe I'll just open up the floor again there, Michael, to see if anyone has any questions or comments that they'd like to share on any of these.
Questions or comments from Phyllis? I assume it was what, like an 11-page memo you sent out?
That's
Phyllis?
right. That's right. Yeah. And I can imagine that everyone didn't immediately download that and immediately start to memorize it. But you know, I think it's helpful to get these in front of you and just quickly go through them here. You know, so these icons I'm using them as a shorthand because I think that sometimes pictures are helpful for people. So here are the 6 sustainability indicators, and they are the icons for chronic lowering of water level, depletion of groundwater and storage, seawater intrusion, which we've already eliminated, but I've included it here for completeness, degradation of water quality, impacts to land subsidence as it affects land use, and depletions of interconnected surface water affecting surface water supply. So you may look at these definitions and you may go, well, they're pretty general. And I think that that's appropriate. We want them to be a high level look at what we want for the subbasin. But we also want enough specificity with them to make sure that we understand what we're managing to. So please consider that. I have some acronyms I've used for the sake of space. SMC is the Sustainable Management Criteria, water levels. And it's spelled out within the memorandum. So, yes.
John here. I raised my hand just to see what would happen. I didn't seem to gather attention, but looking at the memo, I just have a question. You have put out a beginning descriptor or near a complete descriptor of, say, significant and unreasonable reduction of groundwater and storage. And you framed out then at the bottom of it in something like, this will be evidenced by an exceedance of the minimum threshold, but in XX% of GSP monitoring wells in # consecutive semi-annual monitoring events. Are you hoping by the 10th that you'll have input on those numbers? Or rather the broader kind of language of how you're framing it? Or both?
Both would be helpful. And if it's just too early, I think that the numbers of locations, the percentages of the wells, the numbers of consecutive monitoring events, those details can be, number one, selected preliminarily now. Those can also be selected as we go through the project analysis and thinking about where these monitoring wells are. You know, one of the things that's happening is that, you know, everything is related, but yet you're just being asked to look at the first steps of things as we go through the process. But you don't even know where the monitoring locations are yet. And I know you don't, because I don't even know where the monitoring locations are yet. So it is difficult to actually begin to put the technical specificity on those details as a first step. And I'm trying to push us forward in a variety of ways. And I guess my strategy is to put a lot in front of us and then make us do one thing at a time. And then if that doesn't work, try something else. So the answer is if there's specificity that we can begin to think has technical merit. For example, some of the consecutive monitoring events might have some technical details to it because, for example, I think that if you looked at land subsidence benchmarks in certain periods of the time, especially if you're in an area of a lot of land irrigation, that you might have some either elastic land subsidence that would rebound, or you would actually just be seeing something that was related more to field activities, perhaps after the irrigation season. So you might want to think about looking at those in the spring, for example.
Maybe you touched on, I was thinking of it as well. This is maybe a thought comment. Let's not have a philosophical debate per se, but on the both the lowering of water levels and on the reduction in storage, I would think to benchmark to the same time of year. So for change in storage, DWR has historically done it in the springtime because you've removed a lot of pumping influence that can confound data. But as to levels declines, one could look at fall lows and spring highs independent of one another and say our low lows are getting too low. Well, I'll give you that feedback later. But I would think to use semi-annual monitoring events, but in a staggered fashion.
Absolutely. These are great comments, John. This is exactly the thought process that we all need to start moving towards with all of these indicators. And here is something to consider when you start thinking about this. So number one, semi-annual monitoring is required. And we will be putting together protocols, and we will say spring water levels will be measured between these time periods. And when we say these time periods, we will, number one, coordinate with what's already being done, because if there are a lot of wells that are already being measured at a good time in the spring, then we can adjust our time to comply with that. And then we also need to think about, what kind of window do we want? How much do water levels change from February to March, for example? And so we will be adding some of that detail to the monitoring networks and to the monitoring protocols. And there's a lot of synergy, there's a lot of interaction between the thought behind what the protocols look like. There's some practical considerations for the protocols, and then also the technical considerations for the protocols, and then how they marry with the framework. So, yes is the answer to your question for both, to the extent that we can, recognizing that the protocols and the other details are going to also affect that.
Thank you.
And thanks for your question, John. Any other questions for Phyllis?
And so I just move to the next slide, because this is the framework details that John and I were just discussing. This is where we have the opportunity to specifically define what we're going to say as undesirable results. The definitions themselves are the ones that are a little bit high level, and this is sort of where the rubber meets the road. This is where you begin to say the percentage of numbers of wells and how many consecutive semi-annual monitoring events. I put the word semi-annual in there. I am the author of these words. These are not necessarily from the regulations. I believe they follow the regulations, but if there isn't anything magic here, I am trying to get us thinking. And in the absence of input, you have to live with this. So let's give it some input and give it some thought.
Phyllis, this is Amanda, DWR. Can I chime in for just a second?
I would love that, Amanda.
Okay. I apologize for missing the last meeting, but I did want to mention, since we're on the kind of the lowering of groundwater level indicator, to mention that the department must consider the state policy regarding the human right to water when we're implementing our regulations. I realize the human right to water is kind of a new and a little ambiguous, but So just think about that when I'm reading your undesirable result. Think about that, and when you're framing this, that the department has to consider that state policy, and human right to water is pretty inclusive.
That's great to know. Thank you very much for that input, Amanda.
This is Valerie. Thanks, Amanda. That's helpful. So the human right to water seems to be the new topic that is brought up. I know in a lot of a talk I gave, a week ago, it came up as a question. Some comments for existing GSPs, it's come up and people are struggling with. As you mentioned, it's not a very specific, it's a very broad policy expression. It doesn't require, I think it requires consideration certainly, but it doesn't have specific, check marks that you can say, I am protecting the human right to water in these specific 4 ways, and that's what it calls for. Is DWR considering doing kind of a best practices, or what DWR thinks is sufficient? My sense is that if you follow the guidelines of SGMA in considering so many of the beneficial uses of groundwater, that you would probably also cover that evaluation. But I'm wondering if DWR sees a requirement apart from that's not captured in SGMA, or if it can suggest certain considerations that a GSP should include to comply with this policy.
This is Amanda again. I'm going to try to answer you, Valerie. It's difficult for me to do as a regulator because it's a state policy. I think I can share, and we're recording this, so I get nervous when I think I can share something. But this is something that's in the works, right? Usually laws like this are kind of framed and determined when there's lawsuits and a judge makes a decision. But I think the department, as well as the governor's office, is working towards trying to better define this. At least it's in the works. At least in our department it is. So I think it's coming from a SGMA, because we are within the department. Our department has its own role, mission. The Sustainable Groundwater Management Office has our own separate role and mission. I should ask, and I will ask, kind of what their plans are. I hear you on a best management practice or some kind of guidance. We haven't made any decision or had a lot of discussion on whether the Sustainable Groundwater Management Office would do that. And so I think that answers your question. I realize it's probably not the answer you guys were hoping for at this point. So all I can just say is that it's something that we have to consider, and certainly something that maybe it should be part of the discussion.
Thanks. That is somewhat helpful. I'm hopeful that DWR will become more specific if it's a requirement outside the bounds. It would be hard to institute for the GSPs that are provided, but certainly in their updates and the 2022 plans, it'd be helpful to know if you guys have a more precise kind of guidelines. But it sounds like you guys are working on that, so I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks very much. That was a helpful question also, Valerie, to help frame it. Thank you, Amanda, so much for your input. Any other questions or issues associated with the framework? We're essentially done, and the only other slide is next steps. So don't be afraid that if you talk now, you're going to make us super late. Okay,
Phyllis.
we're probably saving it
Phyllis.
for September. Please. Oh, I'm
Phyllis.
sorry. Go ahead. Yes.
Sorry, this is Milt Treeweiler. I do think I should interject a few comments.
Okay.
Going back to Dr. Amrith Ganascara, which I talked about, the California Department of Water and Agriculture scientists and the Agricultural Science Department advisor, he gave the points focused on a climate change path that he presented. He pointed out there were three pieces: mitigation, adaptation, and research. And for the GSAs, the part 2, adaptation, is how we change our behavior in management practices that can be used to help with climate change impacts. Examples would be going to all drip and micro irrigation systems and the recharging of the groundwater in the aquifers. And it is so critical at this point because when I attend Turlock Irrigation District meetings, I find that even in Turlock Irrigation District, which has irrigation canals and irrigation water, they already have farmers who have used all of their irrigation water for this season. And this is a management practice. Others have not used it all. And how are you going to, you know, they're okay in the Turlock West Subbasin. If a farmer uses his water allocations from the irrigation district, they can start pumping. So they've got this extra tool. But Kevin, I'm not pointing this at you, but I'm just pointing this out. In the East Subbasin, they're going with wells the entire time. So they don't have this option of using irrigation water out of the canals and then switching over to pumping when they run out of water from the canals. So somehow there's going to have to be equity here. You can't have one farming company pumping out huge amounts of water and actually, you know, taking water from the aquifer that is lowering the aquifer levels if they're using a disproportionate amount because they're doing flood irrigation rather than micro irrigation. And I understand there's a lot of difference in how much water you use. There's a lot of science behind this. And again, it's pointed out by Dr. Ganascara. He points out that California has a climate change consortium, which is a group of growers, researchers, and representatives from the specialty crop agricultural sectors. This group was asked to evaluate climate change impacts and propose potential strategies for adaptation on the basis of climate change is taking place now. They produced a major report back in 2013 and are continuing to provide new information and reports on adaptation strategies based on science. So there's so much in this, and I really, you know, I really feel for the farmers and what they're going to have to do because there's a lot that's going to have to be done. And that's just a point I wanted to bring up. I mean, somehow you're going to have almost monitoring of every well in an in the subbasin to make this equitable, because if you have a farmer who just wants to pump water because he can drill a deeper well, that's lowering the aquifer for everyone in the subbasin, not just, you know, him, and he's got the deepest well, so what does he care about it? And that's going to be an issue to make this equitable, especially as we go into the climate change scenario, which is happening. And I do have a statement I wanted to read on that. I realize that climate change will be a major challenge that everyone here, everyone listening today will be faced with for the rest of your and my life. This is not going to go away. This is going to be a challenge for the rest of our lives. So we've really got we've got to get something going here that's going to work long range. And that's what I wanted to say today. So thank you, Phyllis, and everyone else.
Thank you, Milt. Well said as usual. We certainly are going to be looking at climate change scenarios as we do the modeling, and it looks like you've started a list of management actions. So good job. That's where we're headed. And I say that a little bit facetiously, but very seriously as well.
I think on that point, if Milt would like to submit any of those documents or reports or web links to maybe Herb or the group, we would always appreciate that. That's good feedback, Milt. And
yes, I can do that, Michael. Okay. Yes, Michael, I can do that. I have this talk, and I will present that to TID then.
Much appreciated. Yeah, Herbert's usually our contact guy for external contacts, so that'll be good. All right, anything else on the memo and undesirable results?
This is Kevin. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Kevin. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, sorry, I got kicked off for most of your item 8 presentation. I'm sorry. My local internet here went down, and they won't be back up until nearly 7 o'clock this evening. So I've been trying to get as much as I can from listening to my phone here. Phyllis, the comments are due on the framework on the 10th. Is that correct?
Yes, and we'll be discussing them again at the 2nd September meeting, that date.
Okay. Okay, well, I think you did a nice job of rewriting it. I think Amanda had a nice addition to it, which I won't comment on. I'll let you come up with the language on that one. But yeah, we've got not a lot of comments, so I think we're getting close.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
My only question is there another document I should be looking at on the definition of an undesirable result? That's the part I think I missed.
So what I've done with the definition and the framework are combined the two of them. So in each one of the sustainability indicator sections, you'll see bolded text. And typically that first paragraph is the definition of undesirable results. And then the sort of manifestation of how we're going to identify those undesirable results is sort of in the second and the third paragraphs. So I'm putting it all together.
That's great.
It would need to be, approved together. I'm parsing it because I just thought that was a more helpful way to think about it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, last slide. Where are we going? Projected water budgets. I'm hoping we're pushing. We do have the information now on the Tuolumne. We're getting the information from Modesto as well as their future use so that we can get that into the model so we don't have to do this 2 and 3 times. Hope that we would come out with one number. We're, again, as everyone knows, coordinating with the Modesto Subbasin to the north, and that's really required here in particular, I think, from not only a policy standpoint, but from a technical standpoint, because the Tuolumne River is shared among the 2 subbasins. So I hope that we will have results that we can discuss in September and provide us with a little bit of our target. We also want to select the preliminary sustainable management criteria in September. We have 2 meetings to do that, as Kevin just summarized very nicely for us. Input on the undesirable results definitions and the framework being the details associated with that. Any input that you have on that, any suggestions that you have on that, that's great. And then projects and management actions, as Debbie pointed out, not too soon to begin a list. We want to begin that in October. We're going to begin that in October, even if we're still doing some of the other stuff. I think that the projects and the management actions, I think Milt's comments today highlighted it as well. We really need to get going and thinking about what this plan is going to contain with respect to how we're going to put together some things in order to manage the basin. So we're going to begin that in October, even if we're still doing some of this other stuff too. Walk and chew gum. That's it for me today. Thank you so much for your attention and your input and your time. And I'll turn it back over to Michael.
Once Michael figures out how to unmute, which he just did. Okay. So thank you for that, Phyllis. Our next item is number 9. So Sigma related updates. Update on the East Turlock Subbasin GSA meeting. Kevin Kaufman.
Thank you. Just wanted the group to know that we're working with Herb in the Communication and Outreach Committee to do a virtual workshop. I think he's going to bring it up if he hasn't already on September 16th, Wednesday, I believe. Yes, Wednesday, September 16th. 2 1-hour format type of workshop, one at 11 o'clock in the morning and one at 5:30 in the afternoon. And during that workshop, we're going to be talking about, one of the minor things we'll be talking about is the Prop 218 process going on the East Turlock Subbasin GSA. Our 5-member entities have hired Provost and Pritchard to do an engineer's report to support a Prop 218 election so that we could collect some funds from the landowners to pay for what we're going through, putting together the GSP. So that's all I wanted to report on at this time, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Kevin, I noticed this week, I think it was Imperial Irrigation District passed a fee, I think of $2,000 per acre foot. They're going to charge their members to pay for imported water. I'm sure the east side's not looking at something that expensive.
Yeah, I could build a new house for that.
Right.
Just joking. Yes, no, it's more in the neighborhood of $2 to $3 per acre.
There you go. Okay. Any questions for Kevin on the East Turlock Subbasin GSA meeting and their activities? Okay. If not, we'll go to Herb Smart and public outreach update.
Thanks, Michael. I just have a quick update. The first thing that I'm going to mention is exactly or similar to what Kevin was mentioning, but it's the same event. So I'm showing on screen, we have a draft flyer. We've been working with our facilitator slash public outreach subcontractor who's been with the Todd team for the GSP development, and they created this flyer, which we're working to finalize. I'm only showing, it's not final, but I'm showing it now. Similar, see if I could back out for a second. It's indicating what Kevin mentioned. We have 2 sessions for our September 16th workshop planned, one at 11 and one at 5:30, both 1 hour long. The same presentation will be given at each, although questions and answers might be slightly different for the live portion. But that's going to occur, and there's registration, and we'll point everybody on this call and in our interested parties list to registering or signing up. Registration isn't going to be required, just like the first workshop, the first virtual community workshop we held on July 8th this year, but it's certainly encouraged. People will be able to view live on the Turlock Groundwater YouTube feed as well. So the topics that you see there about midway through, if I zoom in a little bit, are some of the very same things that Phyllis has discussed today. Talking about sustainability goals and metrics and how we get there, and what's required. So very, it'll be a higher level discussion than the discussion that occurred today. But it's there for the public, and we're going to advertise it and just continue to do our outreach. So that is the first thing that I'm going to mention. And then the second thing that I'm going to mention, which is something I hopefully always do at meetings, just encouraging people, if they're not on our interested parties list, and getting our emails from Turlock Groundwater, to go onto our website at turlockgroundwater.org and sign up for our list. And it's just a one-step process. Just go there, it's right on the front page, and click contact, actually click get involved, and then you get in almost the quickest piece of information you can get from us are our emails or following us on social media. And so that is it for me for now, unless there's any questions.
And Herb, I was just going to say, to help you out, we've got 35 participants today. So many of you have been involved with other subbasins and GSAs. If you have good ideas of how to get the word out, techniques that will work in other subbasins, let Herb know. Again, the more participation we get, the better. And these workshops are well done, and the bigger audience we have, the happier we are. So if anything you can do to help us get the word out, or any suggestions you have to do more outreach, please let Herb know.
And Michael, one other thing I failed to mention, you prompted me a little bit and made me think about it. We also have a stakeholder survey Thus far, we have 20 responses. It's, similar to what the Modesto Subbasin and other subbasins have done, where we're using the survey as a tool to gauge some of the interests and concerns. And there's even a question in there about potential solutions to kind of feed into the GSP process and to help us out. So we have that available. There's a direct link atop our site on turlockgroundwater.org. And there's a link. It's a SurveyMonkey survey. It has 13 questions, and it takes less than 5 minutes unless you want to fill out a lot of information in the text fields. But most of the questions are multiple choice, probably can be done in 3 or 4 minutes. So wanted to get that out there. Anybody and everybody who wants to take it can go to turlockgroundwater.org and click the green banner up top that talks about our stakeholder survey. And we are looking for feedback from people outside the subbasin too. Of course, we're concerned with subbasin stakeholders because our plan will affect them most. But any other opinions are always welcome to improve our groundwater sustainability planning process. So thanks, Mike. Now I'm officially done.
Thank you, Herb. Okay. There you go, the next section of the agenda, I think. Our next meeting is scheduled for September 10th, 2020. Again, it'll be a same time Zoom call unless something changes dramatically. Anything for the good of the order as we finish up here?
I'll motion to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion from Karen. This is for West Turlock. We have a second for West Turlock.
Second, Curtis.
Second from Curtis. All those in favor signify by saying aye to adjourn the West Turlock Subbasin TAC.
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, we are adjourned at 3:27. Kevin?
Thank you. Can I have a motion from the East Side participants, Brody, Lacey, or Walt?
Yeah, move adjourn.
Thank you, Walt. We're adjourned.